Lisa Martinez stared at her phone screen with growing dread. The message from Carlos was short and simple. "Sorry, got the station flu. Can't watch Nomi today." She groaned and let her head fall back against the pillow. This was the third time this month something like this had happened, and she had a massive repair job waiting for her at the engineering bay. From his small bed in the corner of her quarters, Nomi stirred. The baby dragon lifted his horned head and blinked sleepy golden eyes at her. He was about the size of a large cat, with deep blue scales that shimmered like polished sapphires under the lights. Two small horns curved back from his head, and his wings were still too small for flight, folded neatly against his back. When he saw Lisa looking at him, his tail began to wag, thumping softly against his cushion. "Morning, little guy," Lisa said, swinging her legs out of bed. Nomi chirped happily and scrambled across the floor toward her, his claws clicking on the metal surface. He wound around her ankles like a cat, purring in a way that made her chest feel warm. She reached down and scratched behind his horns, right where he liked it best. It had been 3 months since she found him. The rescue mission to Colony 7 had been routine, just checking on why the settlement had gone silent. What they found was devastation. Some kind of seismic event had torn through the buildings, leaving nothing but ruins. The colonists had evacuated weeks before, but somehow they had left Nomi behind. Lisa found him trapped under a collapsed beam in what must have been a research facility, crying pitifully. The moment she lifted him free and held him close, something changed in his eyes. He stopped crying, pressed his small head against her chest, and fell asleep. The rescue team's xenobiologist explained that dragon species often imprinted on the first being who saved them. Nomi had chosen Lisa as his mother, and nothing would change that bond. She tried to find his original owners, but Colony 7's records were a mess, and nobody came forward to claim him. So Lisa became a mother, something she had never planned on being. She looked at the time and winced. Her shift started in less than an hour, and the freight hauler with the broken engine system wasn't going to fix itself. The captain of that vessel had been furious yesterday, demanding the repairs be finished today or he would file a complaint with the station administration. Lisa's supervisor, Thexler, had already warned her that this job was critical. "What am I going to do with you?" she asked Nomi. The dragon chirped and tilted his head, clearly not understanding the problem. Lisa bit her lip, thinking through her options. There was nobody else available to watch him. The station's daycare didn't accept non-standard life forms. She could call in sick herself, but she had already used most of her leave days when Nomi had eaten something that disagreed with him and needed to visit the station's veterinary clinic. An idea formed in her mind. It was risky and definitely against regulations, but maybe, just maybe, she could bring him to work. Her engineering bay was large and usually not too busy in the early morning. If she kept Nomi in her work bag, he might sleep through most of her shift. He was usually pretty calm when he was tired, and he had been up late last night playing with his favorite toy, a piece of rubber tubing that squeaked when he bit it. "Okay," she said, mostly to herself. "We're going to try something new today." Lisa moved quickly through her morning routine. She showered, pulled her dark hair back into a tight ponytail, and dressed in her standard blue mechanic's jumpsuit with her name patch on the chest. While she brushed her teeth, Nomi ate his breakfast, a mixture of protein pellets and dried fruit that the vet had recommended. He crunched happily, small flames occasionally sparking from his nostrils when he got excited about a particularly tasty piece. She packed her large work bag carefully. Her tools went in first, then her tablet and spare parts. She created a small nest in one section using a soft blanket and placed Nomi's favorite rubber toy inside. "Come here, buddy," she called. Nomi waddled over, his belly full and his eyes already drooping. She lifted him gently and placed him in the bag. He turned in a circle twice, then curled up on the blanket, his tail wrapped around his nose. Within seconds, he was snoring softly, tiny puffs of smoke drifting from his nostrils. Lisa zipped the bag mostly closed, leaving enough space for air to flow. She could hear his gentle breathing and feel the slight weight shift as he moved in his sleep. "Please stay quiet," she whispered, knowing he couldn't understand but hoping somehow the message would get through. The walk to the engineering bay took 15 minutes through Nexus Point's main corridors. The station was massive, a hub where dozens of species from across the galaxy came to trade, refuel, and make repairs. The corridors were always busy, filled with beings of every imaginable shape and size. Lisa passed a group of tall, thin Aryans whose skin glowed faintly blue, a pair of Quilnari traders clicking to each other in their insect language, and several humans like herself, all headed to their various jobs. She kept her head down and walked quickly, one hand on her bag. Inside, Nomi shifted slightly but didn't wake. So far, so good. The engineering bay was a huge space filled with ships in various states of repair. The ceiling stretched up 3 stories high, and massive mechanical arms hung from tracks overhead, ready to lift heavy components. The smell of metal, oil, and ozone filled the air. Lisa loved this place. It was where she felt most at home, surrounded by machines she understood and problems she could solve with her hands and her mind. Her workstation was in the back corner, and the freight hauler she needed to repair was already positioned on the main lift. It was an ugly ship, all function and no style, but its engine was a beautiful piece of engineering. Or it would be, once she fixed whatever had gone wrong with the cooling system. "Morning, Lisa." Danny Kim appeared at her elbow, grinning. He was another human mechanic, younger than her by a few years, with an eternal optimism that sometimes annoyed her but mostly made her smile. "Ready to tackle that monster?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Lisa said, setting her bag down carefully beside her toolbox. Inside, Nomi made a small sound but didn't wake. She held her breath, but Danny didn't seem to notice. "Thex is already in a mood," Danny continued, jerking his thumb toward the supervisor's office. Through the window, Lisa could see the tall reptilian form of Thexalor, their Kravik supervisor. He was studying multiple screens with his typical intense focus. The captain of that hauler calmed him 3 times already this morning. "Great," Lisa muttered. "Just what I need." She pulled out her tools and tablet, trying to act normal. The plan was simple. Work as efficiently as possible and hope Nomi stayed asleep until her lunch break. Then she could take him to the quiet storage area and let him stretch his legs before tucking him back in for the afternoon. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. Lisa climbed up into the freight hauler's engine compartment and started diagnostics. The problem was in the cooling system's main junction, just as she had suspected. Some of the connections had corroded and the whole unit needed to be replaced. It was tedious work but not difficult. Danny worked nearby on another ship, and they chatted occasionally about nothing important. Lisa was so focused on removing a particularly stubborn bolt that she didn't notice when the zipper on her bag slowly began to move. Inside, Nomi had woken up from his nap. He yawned, showing rows of tiny sharp teeth, and looked around the dark interior of the bag with confusion. This wasn't his usual sleeping spot. Where was Lisa? He could smell her nearby, mixed with all sorts of interesting new scents. Metal and oil and something sharp that made his nose wrinkle. Curiosity won over sleepiness. Nomi pushed his nose against the bag's opening and found it would move. He pushed harder and the zipper opened more. Light streamed in, and with it a whole world of fascinating new things. The baby dragon wiggled forward, squeezing through the opening, and tumbled out onto the floor of the engineering bay. He stood up, shook himself, and looked around with wonder. Everything was so big and so interesting. Strange machines towered above him. Bright lights hung from the ceiling. And there were smells, so many smells, each one more intriguing than the last. "Lisa?" Danny's voice came from nearby. "Lisa, I think your bag is moving." From inside the engine compartment, Lisa's heart stopped. "No, no, no." She scrambled backward, nearly hitting her head on a low beam, and looked down. Her bag was open and Nomi was gone. "Nomi," she called, trying to keep her voice low. "Where are you?" A cheerful chirp answered her. She looked around frantically and spotted him. The baby dragon had waddled several meters away and was now sitting in a patch of sunlight streaming through a high window, his scales glittering beautifully. He looked up at her and chirped again, clearly pleased with himself for finding such a nice warm spot. Danny stared at Nomi, then at Lisa, then back at Nomi. His mouth opened and closed several times before any words came out. "Is that a dragon? Did you bring a dragon to work?" Before Lisa could answer, she heard the heavy footsteps she had been dreading. Thexalor was approaching, drawn by the unusual noise. The Kravik supervisor was nearly 7 feet tall, with dark green scales and eyes that missed nothing. This was it. She was going to get fired, and probably banned from the engineering bay forever. All because she couldn't find a babysitter. Thexalor's footsteps echoed through the engineering bay, each one sending a jolt of panic through Lisa's chest. The Kravik supervisor was known throughout Nexus Point as one of the strictest beings on the entire station. He ran the engineering department like a military operation, with rules for everything and tolerance for nothing that deviated from protocol. Lisa had seen him give hour-long lectures about the proper way to store wrenches. Martinez, his deep voice rumbled as he approached. What is the meaning of this disruption? I heard unusual sounds and Kim appears to be in some kind of shock. Lisa stepped forward, positioning herself between Thexler and Nomi. The baby dragon, completely unaware of the trouble he had caused, continued to sit in his patch of sunlight, now grooming one of his wings with his tiny tongue. Sir, I can explain. My babysitter called in sick this morning and I had no one to watch. There is an unauthorized life form in my engineering bay, Thexler interrupted. His scales rippling in a pattern that Lisa had learned meant he was annoyed. Regulation 47 clearly states that no non-registered creatures are permitted in active work zones due to safety concerns and potential contamination of sensitive equipment. I know. Sir, and I apologize. It won't happen again. I'll take him home right now. Lisa started to move toward Nomi, but before she could take 2 steps, the dragon spotted Thexler. Nomi's eyes went wide with fascination. He had never seen a Kravik before. The supervisor's scales were a beautiful dark green, almost black in some lights, and they reflected the bay's lights in interesting ways. To Nomi's baby dragon mind, Thexler looked like a very large, very interesting version of himself. The dragon chirped excitedly and began waddling toward the supervisor as fast as his short legs could carry him. No, Nomi, come here, Lisa called, but the dragon ignored her. He had a new friend to meet. Thexler stood perfectly still as the baby dragon approached. His face showed no emotion, which was typical for Kraviks when dealing with unexpected situations. He watched as Nomi reached his feet and sat down, looking up at him with those huge golden eyes full of innocent curiosity. This creature appears to be a juvenile dragon of the Sapphire Mountain variety, Thexler observed, his voice carefully neutral. They are native to the colony worlds in Sector 9. How did you come to possess such a being? I found him during a rescue mission 3 months ago, Lisa explained quickly. He was abandoned on Colony 7. He imprinted on me and I couldn't find his original owners. I've been taking care of him since then. He's really well behaved most of the time, I promise. Today was just an emergency. She stopped talking because something impossible was happening. Nomi had stood up on his back legs, pressing his front paws against Thexler's shin, and was making a soft cooing sound. The dragon's tail wagged back and forth so hard that his whole back end wiggled with the motion. Then Nomi did something he had only learned to do last week. He took a deep breath, puffed out his small chest, and exhaled a tiny stream of flame. But instead of a straight line, the flame curved and twisted, forming a perfect heart shape that floated in the air for just a moment before dissipating into harmless smoke. Danny gasped. Lisa's mouth fell open, and Thexler's scales began to change color. The shift was subtle at first, the dark green lightening just slightly, but then the change spread across his body in a wave, until his scales had turned a soft blue-green color that Lisa had never seen before. In Kravik culture, scale color changes were involuntary expressions of deep emotion. The rigid, protocol-obsessed Thexler was having a feeling. For a long moment, nobody moved. The supervisor stared down at Nomi, who stared back up at him, tail still wagging. Then Thexler cleared his throat, a sound like rocks grinding together, and his scales began to darken back to their normal color. The creature is adequate, he said, his voice slightly strained. He cleared his throat again. However, regulations are regulations. This cannot be permitted. Nomi, sensing that his new friend might be upset, made a concerned chirping sound and tilted his head to one side. His ears, which were small and tucked close to his head, perked forward. Thexler looked at the dragon. His scales flickered toward blue again. He looked away quickly. That is, the regulations clearly state. He paused, seemed to be having some kind of internal struggle, then continued in a rush. However, Regulation 72 subsection D allows for temporary exceptions in cases of emergency circumstances when proper authorization is pending. I will consider this situation to fall under that provision. For today only. Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Sir? You heard me, Martinez. For today only. The creature may remain while you complete your work on the freight hauler, but you will file the proper emergency exemption forms by end of shift. and you will ensure that appropriate accommodations are made for future circumstances. Is that understood? Yes, sir, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thexler nodded stiffly, deliberately not looking at Nomi, who was now trying to climb up his leg. The supervisor carefully detached the dragon and set him on the floor. Return to your work. And Kim, stop standing there with your mouth open. You look foolish. Danny snapped his mouth shut as Thexler turned and walked away with swift, purposeful steps. The supervisor retreated to his office and shut the door firmly behind him. Through the window, they could see him sit down at his desk and begin typing furiously on his terminal, his scales still showing traces of blue. Did that just happen? Danny asked quietly. Did Thexler just go soft over a baby dragon? I think so, Lisa said, still stunned. She scooped up Nomi, who squirmed in her arms, wanting to follow his new friend. I can't believe it. I was sure he was going to fire me. That was the cutest thing I've ever seen, Danny said, moving closer to look at Nomi properly. Can I hold him? Lisa hesitated, then passed the dragon over. Nomi settled into Danny's arms without complaint, already comfortable with the new person. He sniffed at Danny's jumpsuit with interest, probably smelling the sandwich that Danny always kept in his chest pocket for lunch. He's so warm, Danny said with wonder, and look at his scales. They're beautiful. He scratched gently under Nomi's chin and the dragon began to purr, a sound like a very small engine running. I had no idea dragons could be so friendly. Most can't, Lisa admitted. The vet told me that sapphire mountain dragons are unusual. They're social creatures who form strong bonds with others. In the wild, they live in family groups. Nomi thinks I'm his family now. Danny continued to pet the dragon, smiling as Nomi's eyes half closed with pleasure. What's he eat? Protein pellets, fruits, and vegetables. The vet gave me a whole diet plan. He's still growing, so his nutrition has to be carefully balanced. Lisa checked her watch. I should probably get back to work. That hauler won't fix itself. Can I help? Danny asked, still holding Nomi. I mean, with the hauler, I'm ahead on my own work, and maybe Nomi could hang out with me while you do the complicated stuff. Lisa looked at Danny's eager face and smiled. Yeah, that would actually be great, thanks. They worked together for the next hour, with Nomi being passed between them when one needed both hands for a task. The dragon seemed perfectly happy with the arrangement, curious about everything they were doing but not getting in the way. When Lisa had to crawl into a tight space to reach a connection, Danny kept Nomi entertained with a piece of string. When Danny climbed up to check the upper connections, Lisa let Nomi sit on her shoulder and watch. Other workers in the bay began to notice. A Aryan technician named Keth drifted over, her translucent skin glowing with curiosity. Is that a living creature? May I observe it? Sure, Lisa said, feeling oddly proud. His name is Nomi. Keth extended one long, delicate finger and gently touched Nomi's head. The dragon chirped and nuzzled against her hand. The Aryan's glow brightened with what Lisa had learned was their version of a smile. Remarkable. I have never encountered such a being. Human customs of companion bonding are fascinating. Word spread quickly after that. By the time Lisa's lunch break arrived, a small crowd had gathered around her workstation. There were 3 more humans from other shifts who had heard about Nomi and came to see. There were 2 Bruntari, huge bear-like beings who spoke in rumbling voices and were surprisingly gentle when they asked to pet the dragon. There was even a Quilnari trader who happened to be in the bay checking on his own ship repairs. Nomi loved all the attention. He showed off his tricks, making small heart-shaped flames, standing on his back legs and even doing a little hop that made everyone laugh. When someone gave him a piece of fruit, he carefully toasted it with a tiny flame before eating it, which impressed everyone watching. Lisa noticed that Thexler had emerged from his office and was watching from a distance. Their eyes met briefly, and the supervisor gave her a small nod before returning to his work. His scales, Lisa noticed, were still showing just a hint of blue around the edges. Maybe, she thought, this day would turn out okay after all. By the time Lisa returned from her lunch break, the engineering bay had transformed into something resembling a zoo. At least 20 beings from various species crowded around her workstation, all talking excitedly and craning their necks to catch a glimpse of Nomi. The baby dragon sat in the middle of the attention like a tiny king holding court, his tail wagging and his eyes bright with happiness. What in the world? Lisa muttered, pushing through the crowd. Danny stood near her toolbox, looking overwhelmed and slightly panicked. He held Nomi protectively against his chest. "I'm sorry," Danny said when he saw her. "I took him to the cafeteria for just 5 minutes so he could get some water, and people started following us. Then someone took a picture and posted it on the station's social network, and now everyone wants to meet him." Lisa looked around at the diverse crowd. She recognized a few faces from other departments, but most were complete strangers. Some wore the uniforms of cargo haulers, others dressed in the elaborate robes of merchants. A group of Aryans hovered near the ceiling, their glowing forms creating a soft blue light over the whole scene. "Everyone, please," Lisa said, raising her voice. "I need to get back to work. I have a repair deadline." "Just 5 minutes," called out a human woman wearing a medical uniform. "I work in the pediatric ward. I've never seen a real dragon before. Can he really breathe fire?" "Yes, but how old is he?" asked a Brontari, his deep voice rumbling through the bay. 3 months since I found him, but I don't know his actual age." "Is he dangerous?" This from a nervous-looking Kravik much smaller and younger than Thexler. "No, he's very gentle. Can we pet him? Does he have a social media account? Is he for sale?" The questions came faster than Lisa could answer them. Nomi, sensing the energy in the crowd, chirped loudly and wriggled in Danny's arms. Danny set him down, and the dragon immediately trotted over to the young Kravik who had asked if he was dangerous. The Kravik froze as Nomi approached. His scales rippled with nervousness, shifting through shades of gray and green. Nomi sat down in front of him, tilted his head and made a soft, reassuring sound. Then the dragon did his heart-shaped flame trick, the small fire floating up between them like a gift. The young Kravik's scales flushed a deep, warm blue. "Oh," he breathed. "Oh, he is wonderful. That broke the dam." Everyone surged forward at once, wanting to interact with Nomi. Lisa started to panic, worried that the dragon would be overwhelmed or frightened, but Nomi seemed to be having the time of his life. He moved from person to person, accepting pets and scratches, offering his little flame hearts to those who seemed nervous, and generally charming everyone he met. A commotion near the entrance made Lisa turn. A group of Quilnari traders had arrived. There were 5 of them, tall insectoid beings with multifaceted eyes and clicking mandibles. Quilnari were known throughout the galaxy as aggressive negotiators who rarely showed emotion and cared only about profit. They pushed through the crowd with their usual brusque manner. The lead Quilnari, whose name tag identified him as Kritchak, stopped when he spotted Nomi. His antennae, which had been lying flat against his head, suddenly stood straight up. He made a series of rapid clicks that his translator device rendered as impossible. "A sapphire mountain dragon. I thought they were extinct in this sector." "He's not extinct, obviously," Lisa said, moving to stand near Nomi protectively. She had dealt with Quilnari before and found them difficult at best. Kritchak ignored her and approached Nomi directly. The dragon looked up at the tall insect-like being and cocked his head with interest. The Quilnari crouched down, moving with surprising grace for someone so large. He extended one of his 4 arms toward Nomi, moving slowly. "Careful," Lisa warned. "He's friendly, but—" Her words died as Nomi stepped forward and pressed his head against the Quilnari's outstretched hand. Kritchak's antennae quivered, and a sound came from his translator that Lisa had never heard before. A soft, gentle humming. "He is perfect," Kritchak said, his mechanical voice somehow conveying wonder. "Small guardian. Braveheart." He looked up at Lisa, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the bay's lights. "You are the mother?" Yes, I guess I am," Lisa said, surprised by the question and by the Quilnari's gentleness. Kritchak stood and gestured to his companions. They rushed forward, all clicking excitedly. From their bags they produced fruits Lisa had never seen before. Purple orbs covered in soft spines, golden berries that sparkled in the light, and something that looked like a cross between a melon and a flower. They arranged these offerings in a circle around Nomi like they were presenting gifts to royalty. "For the small guardian," Kritchak explained. "It is our way. When we see something precious, we honor it." Nomi sniffed the fruits with interest, then carefully selected the golden berry. He held it between his front paws, breathed a tiny flame over it until it was warm, then bit into it. Juice ran down his chin. He chirped happily, and all 5 Quilnari made that humming sound together, creating a symphony of contentment. "I have 37 hatchlings of my own," Kritchak said to Lisa. I understand the bond. You have done well with him. He is healthy and happy. This is clear to see. Lisa felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly. She had been so worried about being a good mother to Nomi, questioning every decision. To hear approval from a being who had raised so many children of his own meant more than she expected. "Thank you," she said quietly. The Quilnari traders stayed for almost an hour, content to sit on the bay floor and watch Nomi eat his treats. Other beings cycled through the crowd. Someone from the station's administrative office came to take official documentation photos. A journalist for the sector's news network tried to get an interview until Danny ran interference and politely sent her away. Around mid-afternoon, Captain Helen Brooks arrived. Lisa saw her pushing through the crowd and felt her stomach drop. The captain was the commanding officer of Nexus Point's human contingent, responsible for all human personnel on the station. She was known for being fair but strict, and Lisa was certain she had come to reprimand her for the chaos in the engineering bay. Captain Brooks was a tall woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a military-style bun. She wore her uniform perfectly pressed, every decoration and badge in exactly the right place. Her expression was stern as she surveyed the scene. "Martinez," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. The crowd quieted. "I heard there was an unauthorized life form in the engineering bay. I came to investigate." "Yes, ma'am," Lisa said, standing at attention. "I take full responsibility. My babysitter was sick and I had no other options. Supervisor Thexler granted me a one-day emergency exemption under Regulation 72 subsection D. I've already filed the proper paperwork." Captain Brooks nodded slowly. "I see. And where is this creature now?" Lisa pointed. Nomi had finished his treats and was now engaged in a game with 3 human children who worked in the station's hydroponics bay. They rolled a ball and he chased it, his small wings flapping even though he couldn't fly yet. When he caught the ball, he brought it back and dropped it at their feet, then crouched down with his rear end in the air and his tail wagging, ready to chase again. The captain watched for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she walked over to where Nomi was playing. The dragon noticed her approach and stopped, looking up at this new person with interest. Captain Brooks knelt down, which surprised everyone. She extended one hand, palm up. Nomi sniffed her hand carefully, then stepped forward and placed his front paws on her knee. He looked directly into her eyes, and Lisa could see him assessing this person, trying to decide if she was a friend. Then Nomi made his decision. He climbed up onto the captain's leg, walked across her lap, and settled on her shoulder, tucking himself against her neck. Captain Brooks remained perfectly still. Nomi snuggled closer, made a comfortable sound, and closed his eyes. Within seconds, he was asleep, his small body warm against the captain's neck. Tiny puffs of smoke drifted from his nostrils with each breath. The captain's stern expression cracked. A smile appeared, small at first, then growing. She carefully stood up, one hand supporting the sleeping dragon. "He's heavier than he looks," she said, surprised. "He ate a lot of fruit," Lisa explained, moving closer. "I can take him." "No," Captain Brooks said quickly. "No, let him sleep." "How long has he been entertaining everyone?" "About 4 hours," Danny supplied. "He hasn't stopped moving the whole time." The captain walked slowly back to where Lisa stood. Nomi continued to sleep, snoring softly. "I came here prepared to shut this situation down," Captain Brooks admitted. "Regulations exist for good reasons, but I see now that this is something different, something special." She looked around at the crowd, which had gone quiet, watching her. Kritchak and his fellow Quilnari. The Aryans still hovering near the ceiling. The Brontari workers. The humans from various departments. The young Kravik whose scales still showed traces of blue. All these different beings, who normally kept to their own groups, were gathered together, united by their affection for a baby dragon. "I want a full report on my desk by tomorrow morning," Captain Brooks said to Lisa, her voice official again. "But I'm also going to recommend to the station administration that we create a new program. A companion." The peaceful afternoon in the engineering bay shattered when the emergency alarm began to wail. Lisa jerked upright from where she had been working on the freight hauler's cooling system, nearly hitting her head on a support beam. The alarm was a sound every station resident dreaded. 3 short bursts followed by a long tone repeated over and over. It meant a ship was in serious trouble. "All emergency response personnel report immediately," the station's automated voice boomed through the speakers. Civilian transport vessel in critical distress. Multiple systems failure. This is not a drill. Around the bay, every mechanic and technician stopped what they were doing. Lisa scrambled down from the hauler and grabbed her emergency kit, her heart pounding. She had been through disaster drills dozens of times, but this was the first real emergency since she had come to Nexus Point 2 years ago. Danny appeared at her side, his face pale. Did they say civilian transport? How many people are on those usually? Depends on the size, Lisa said, checking her kit to make sure she had everything. Could be anywhere from 50 to 500. She looked around frantically. Where's Nomi? The baby dragon was exactly where she had left him, sleeping in his makeshift bed near her toolbox. The alarm had woken him and he looked confused and frightened, his ears pressed flat against his head. Lisa scooped him up and tucked him into her bag. There was no time to take him home and she couldn't leave him alone in the bay. I'm sorry, buddy, she whispered. I know it's scary, but I need you to stay quiet and stay hidden, okay? Nomi seemed to sense the urgency in her voice. He curled up small in the bag and made a soft, worried chirp. Thexler strode out of his office, already wearing his emergency response gear. His scales had darkened to almost black, a sign of his intense focus. Martinez, Kim, you're with me. Grab your cutting tools and welding equipment. The ship is losing power fast and we may need to breach the hull to reach trapped passengers. Yes, sir, Lisa and Danny said together. They grabbed their tools and followed the supervisor toward the bay's exit. Around them, other emergency teams were assembling. Medical personnel with their kits, security officers, structural engineers. Everyone moving with practiced efficiency despite the panic thrumming beneath the surface. They boarded a fast transport shuttle that would take them to the damaged ship. Through the viewport, Lisa could see the vessel limping toward one of the station's docking ports. It was a large civilian transport, the kind that carried families and workers between systems. Smoke poured from one of its engine sections, and several of its lights flickered weakly. Status report, Thexler demanded, pulling up information on his tablet. A Kravik engineer from another shift read from his own device. Transport vessel Meridian Dawn, 340 passengers and crew. They suffered a catastrophic engine failure while approaching the station. Main power is at 20% and dropping. Life support is running on backup systems. They managed to dock, but the connection is unstable. We need to evacuate everyone and repair the engine before the ship loses power completely. How long do we have? Lisa asked. Best estimate? 4 hours before life support fails completely. Less if the backup systems fail faster than expected. 4 hours to save 340 people. Lisa felt the weight of that number settle on her shoulders. She glanced down at her bag where Nomi was hidden. She should have taken him home. But there was no time now. The shuttle docked and they poured out into the transport ship's corridors. The difference was immediate. The station's halls were always warm and well lit. The transport ship was cold and dim, with emergency lights casting everything in a red glow. The air smelled wrong, sharp with the scent of burned electronics and something else Lisa couldn't identify. Passengers filled the corridors, being guided toward the station by security personnel. Lisa saw families with small children, elderly beings of various species, workers carrying whatever belongings they could grab. Everyone moved with controlled panic, trying not to run but clearly terrified. A little human girl, maybe 5 years old, stood crying against one wall. Her parents were nowhere in sight. Without thinking, Lisa stopped and knelt down beside her. Hey, sweetie, are you lost? The girl nodded, tears streaming down her face. I can't find my mom. It's okay. The security officers will help you find her. See that nice Aryan over there? Lisa pointed to one of the glowing beings helping organize the evacuation. Go tell her you're lost and she'll take care of you. The girl nodded and ran toward the Aryan. Lisa stood up and hurried to catch up with her team, but inside her bag, Nomi had stirred. The dragon had heard the little girl crying. He pushed his head out of the bag just far enough to see what was happening. The emergency team made their way deeper into the ship, fighting against the flow of evacuating passengers. They reached the engine room to find chaos. The chief engineer, a Brontari woman named Kara, stood in front of a massive bank of displays all showing red warning indicators. Thank the stars you're here, Kara said when she saw Thexler. The main junction is completely fused. We can't get to it to even assess the damage, and without fixing it, we can't restore main power. Backup systems are failing faster than projected. We have maybe 3 hours now. Thexilor studied the displays with his usual intense focus. Show me. Kara led them through a maze of machinery to the heart of the engine room. Heat radiated from every surface and warning klaxons blared constantly. They stopped in front of what should have been an access panel to the main junction. Instead, there was a solid wall of melted metal and fused components. It overheated so fast that everything just melted together, Kara explained. We've tried cutting through, but our tools can't penetrate without risking an explosion. The whole area is still incredibly hot and unstable. Lisa examined the fused seal, her engineer's mind already working on the problem. The metal had melted and rehardened in layers, creating a complex mass that would be nearly impossible to cut through safely. They would need extreme precision, cutting at exactly the right temperature to melt through each layer, without causing the volatile materials beneath to ignite. We need specialized cutting equipment, Thexilor said, something that can maintain a steady, precise temperature. The station has industrial lasers, but it will take at least 2 hours to transport them here and set them up. We don't have 2 hours, Kara said desperately. People are still on this ship. We have passengers with medical conditions who can't wait that long, and there are 30 crew members trapped in the aft section. The doors sealed automatically when the fire started. They have maybe 90 minutes of air left. The enormity of the situation crashed down on everyone. They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the constant wail of alarms and the hiss of failing systems. In Lisa's bag, Nomi pushed himself further out. He could feel Lisa's fear and stress, could sense the tension in everyone around them. The dragon's instincts, still developing but already strong, told him that something was very wrong. His mother needed help. There has to be something we can do, Danny said, his voice breaking slightly. We can't just give up. Nobody is giving up, Thexilor said firmly. We will find a solution. We always do. But even as he said it, Lisa could see the doubt in his eyes. They were running out of time and they had no good options. She put one hand on her bag, feeling Nomi's warmth through the fabric. The dragon was getting restless. She could feel him moving around, probably scared by all the noise and commotion. Then an idea struck her. It was crazy. It was probably impossible. But they were running out of time, and crazy ideas were all they had left. What if we didn't use mechanical tools? Lisa said slowly. What if we used a biological solution? Everyone turned to look at her. Thexilor's head tilted slightly. Explain. Lisa took a deep breath. Baby dragons can control their flame temperature with extreme precision when they're calm and focused. Nomi has been practicing. He can produce flames anywhere from barely warm to hot enough to melt steel. If we could get him to focus on this seal, he might be able to cut through it layer by layer, without causing an explosion. Nomi? Kara asked, confused. Who is Nomi? Lisa opened her bag. The baby dragon climbed out and sat on her arm, looking around at all the strange faces with curiosity. His tail curled around her wrist for security. You brought a dragon to an emergency repair mission? Kara asked, incredulous. I brought a dragon to work because my babysitter was sick, Lisa corrected. The emergency happened after that. Thexilor moved closer, examining Nomi with his analytical gaze. Sapphire mountain dragons are known for their precision fire control, he said thoughtfully. In theory, your suggestion could work. But this dragon is very young. Can he maintain that level of control under stress? I don't know, Lisa admitted. But I do know he wants to help. He can sense when something is wrong. And right now, every person on this ship is counting on us to figure something out. Nomi chirped and looked up at Thexilor, recognizing him from earlier. The dragon made a small heart-shaped flame, even here in this crisis, trying to make his friend feel better. Thexilor's scales flickered toward blue for just a moment. Then he straightened and became all business again. Very well. We will attempt Martinez's solution, but we do this carefully and with every safety. Lisa knelt down on the engine room floor and gently set Nomi in front of the fused seal. The baby dragon looked up at her, then at the wall of melted metal, then back at her again. His head tilted in that questioning way that always made her heart melt. But now there was no time for being cute. Lives depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Okay, Nomi, Lisa said softly, pitching her voice in the calm, steady tone she used during their training sessions at home. Remember how we practice with the metal pieces? Remember how you make the fire hot, then cool, then hot again? Nomi chirped and sat down, his tail curling around his feet. His golden eyes focused on her face with complete attention. This was his mom, and she needed something from him. He would try his very best to help. Around them, the emergency team moved into position. Danny stood ready with fire suppression equipment, a foam sprayer in his hands. Kara monitored her displays, watching for any dangerous spikes in temperature or pressure. 3 other engineers stood at various points around the engine room, ready to shut down systems if needed. Thexler stood directly behind Lisa, his analytical gaze fixed on the dragon. The outer layer is standard durasteel, Kara called out, reading from her scanner. It needs about 800 degrees to melt cleanly. Too much hotter and you'll damage the components underneath. Too cool and you won't get through. 800 degrees. Lisa had practiced temperature control with Nomi dozens of times in their quarters, using a thermometer to measure his flame output. He could hit 800 degrees. She had seen him do it, but that was in a safe, calm environment, not in a dark, loud engine room with alarms blaring and people's lives at stake. "Nomi, look at me," Lisa said, putting her hands on either side of the dragon's face. He focused on her completely, blocking out everything else. "Hot fire. Like when we melt the practice metal." "Can you do that?" The dragon made a soft sound and nodded his head. Lisa knew some people thought she was imagining it when she said Nomi understood her, but she had lived with him for 3 months. She knew the difference between his random movements and his deliberate responses. He understood. "Show me your hot fire," Lisa said, pointing at a small test piece of metal she had placed on the floor. "Melt this one first." Nomi looked at the metal. He took a deep breath, his small chest expanding, and exhaled a stream of flame. The fire was thin and controlled, focused like a cutting torch. The metal began to glow red, then orange, then started to sag as it melted. The dragon held the flame steady until the metal was a puddle, then stopped and looked at Lisa for approval. "Perfect," she breathed. "That was perfect. Now we need you to do that to the big wall, but very carefully, just a little bit at a time." She positioned Nomi in front of the fused seal, pointing to a spot near the edge. "Start here. Make a line going up like we draw in the air at home." Thexler moved closer, his scales rippling with tension. "Martinez, if this goes wrong—" "It won't," Lisa said with more confidence than she felt. "Nomi can do this." "I know he can." The dragon looked at the wall, then at Lisa, then at the wall again. He seemed to understand the task. This was like their practice games, but bigger and more important. He could feel how much his mother needed him to succeed. Nomi took another deep breath and began. The flame that came from his mouth was beautiful in its precision. It was thin as a pencil, focused and controlled. Where it touched the fused seal, the metal began to glow and melt, running down in small rivulets. The dragon moved his head slowly, creating a vertical line exactly as Lisa had instructed. "Temperature holding at 810 degrees, Kara called out, her voice amazed. "He's right in the target range. I've never seen such precise control from any biological creature." "Keep going, Nomi," Lisa encouraged. "You're doing so well." The dragon continued his cut, moving with careful concentration. His tail was perfectly still, a sign of his intense focus. The cut extended upward, creating a glowing line through the fused metal. When he reached the top, he stopped and looked at Lisa. "Good boy," she said, relief flooding through her. "Now we need to make more lines." "Can you make another one next to that one?" Nomi began the second cut, then the third, then the fourth. Each line was perfectly parallel to the others, each one exactly the right temperature to melt through without causing damage. The work was slow and exhausting for the small dragon. After the 6th cut, he stopped and sat down, panting slightly. Small wisps of smoke curled from his nostrils. "He needs a break," Lisa said immediately. "He's still a baby. He can't maintain this level of output indefinitely." "We don't have time for break," one of the other engineers protested. "The backup systems are failing faster than predicted. We have maybe 2 hours left." "He needs 2 minutes to rest," Lisa said firmly. "Pushing him too hard will only make him lose control, and then we'll have bigger problems." Thexler nodded. "Martinez is correct. 2 minutes. Use the time to prepare the next phase." Lisa scooped up Nomi and held him close. The dragon was warm, warmer than usual from all the fire breathing. She could feel his little heart beating fast against her chest. "You're amazing," she whispered to him. "So brave and so smart. Just a little bit more and then we'll go home and you can have all the treats you want." Nomi nuzzled against her neck, making a tired but happy sound. He was exhausted, but he understood that his job wasn't finished yet. His mother still needed him. Danny approached with a water container. Will he drink? He needs to stay hydrated. Lisa offered the water to Nomi and he lapped at it gratefully. The cool liquid seemed to revive him. His eyes brightened and he chirped more energetically. Temperature readings on the seal are good, Kara reported. The cuts are clean and precise. We're almost through the outer layer. After that is a layer of insulation material, then the actual junction housing. 3 layers total, 3 layers. Nomi had completed 6 cuts through the first layer. Lisa did the mental math. He would need at least 12 more cuts through the insulation, then probably 20 or more through the junction housing, to create an opening large enough for a person to reach through. Could he do that much work? He was already tired. 2 minutes are up, Thexalor said. Can he continue? Lisa looked down at Nomi. The dragon looked back at her and chirped, straightening his small body. He was ready to keep going. He can continue, Lisa said. She set him back down in front of the seal. Okay, buddy. More lines. Just like before. Nomi went back to work. Cut after cut, line after line, he melted through the fused metal with unwavering precision. The emergency team watched in awed silence as this baby dragon accomplished what their advanced technology could not. Each cut was perfect. Each temperature was exactly right. After the 12th cut, Nomi broke through the outer layer completely. The insulation material beneath was visible, a different color and texture. This layer required a different temperature, cooler than the steel but still hot enough to melt cleanly. 650 degrees for this layer, Kara called out. Lisa relayed the information to Nomi in their simple way, using hand gestures and tone of voice to indicate that he needed less heat, cooler fire. The dragon seemed to understand. His next flame was noticeably less intense and the insulation material began to melt at exactly the right rate. Remarkable, Thexilor murmured. His ability to adjust temperature based on verbal and visual cues is extraordinary. I have never witnessed such adaptive behavior in such a young creature. The work continued. Nomi cut through the insulation layer, stopped for another brief rest, then started on the final layer, the junction housing itself. This was the most delicate work yet. Too much heat would damage the critical components inside. Too little wouldn't cut through. 700 degrees exactly, Kara said. Not a degree more or less. The components inside can't handle any variation. This was it, the most difficult task. Lisa knelt beside Nomi, one hand resting gently on his back for reassurance. Very careful now, she said softly. Hot fire, but not too hot. Like when we warm up your dinner, not when we cook it. Nomi looked at her and she saw complete trust in his eyes. He believed she would guide him correctly. She believed he could do this. Together, they could save everyone on the ship. The dragon began his final series of cuts. His flame was a thing of beauty, perfectly controlled and absolutely steady. The junction housing began to give way, one precise line at a time. The room was silent except for the hiss of melting metal and the constant background noise of failing systems. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Nomi made his final cut. A section of the junction housing fell away with a clang, revealing the damaged components inside. The opening was large enough for a person to reach through and work. The dragon sat down heavily, completely exhausted. Smoke drifted lazily from his nostrils. He looked up at Lisa with tired but proud eyes. He did it, Danny breathed. He actually did it. Kara was already moving forward with her tools. The damage is accessible now. I can replace the burned-out components. Give me 15 minutes. The other engineers swarmed around the opening Nomi had created, passing tools and parts to Kara. Lisa scooped up Nomi and moved away from the work area, holding him close. The dragon was so tired he could barely keep his eyes open. You did it, Lisa whispered, tears streaming down her face. You saved. Lisa woke up the next morning to the sound of her door chime ringing constantly. She groaned and checked the time. 6 a.m. She had only gotten 4 hours of sleep after the long night of helping finish the repairs on the Meridian Dawn. Beside her, Nomi was still sound asleep in his bed, curled into a tight ball. The dragon had been so exhausted that he had slept through dinner and all through the night. The door chime rang again, more insistent this time. Lisa dragged herself out of bed and opened the door to find Danny standing there with 3 cups of coffee and a tablet tucked under his arm. His eyes were wide and he was practically bouncing with excitement. You haven't seen it yet, have you? he asked, pushing past her into the small quarters. Seen what? Lisa asked, taking one of the coffees gratefully. Danny, it's 6 in the morning. What's going on? This, Danny said, shoving the tablet at her. This is going on. Lisa looked at the screen and nearly dropped her coffee. The station's news network homepage was dominated by a massive headline. Baby dragon saves 340 lives in daring rescue. Below it was a photo of Nomi, his small face focused in concentration, breathing his precise flame at the fused seal. Someone had been filming the entire rescue operation. Oh no, Lisa whispered. Oh yes, Danny corrected. It gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. He scrolled down. The article had been shared across every major news network in the sector. Then across multiple sectors. The story had gone viral across half the galaxy. Lisa scrolled through her messages and felt her stomach drop. There were hundreds of them. Interview requests from journalists. Messages from scientists wanting to study Nomi. Offers from entertainment companies wanting to make documentaries. Someone wanted to write a children's book series about him. 3 different toy manufacturers wanted to create Nomi merchandise. This is insane, Lisa said, sinking down onto her small couch. We were just trying to help. I know, Danny said, sitting beside her. But you have to admit, it's pretty amazing. A baby dragon using his abilities to save hundreds of people? That's the kind of story that crosses all species boundaries. Everyone can appreciate it. A soft chirp came from the corner. Nomi had woken up and was stretching, his small wings spreading wide. He yawned, showing his tiny, sharp teeth, then waddled over to Lisa. He could sense she was upset about something. Lisa picked him up and held him close. You're famous, little guy. Everyone in the galaxy wants to meet you now. Nomi tilted his head, not understanding but pleased to be held. He nuzzled against Lisa's chest and made a contented purring sound. The door chime rang again. This time it was Captain Brooks, along with a Kravik woman Lisa didn't recognize. The captain looked tired but pleased. Good morning, Martinez. I hope we're not too early. No, ma'am. I was already awake. Lisa gestured to Danny and his tablet. Captain Brooks smiled. Ah, you've seen the news then. This is Administrator Veltara from the Galactic Trade Commission. She arrived on an express shuttle about an hour ago, specifically to meet Nomi. The Kravik woman stepped forward. Her scales were a deep purple color that Lisa had never seen before, and she wore elaborate robes that marked her as someone of high rank. It is an honor to meet you, Ms. Martinez, and this must be the famous Nomi. Nomi looked at the new Kravik with interest. He chirped a greeting and made a small heart-shaped flame. Veltara's scales flushed blue immediately. Oh my, she breathed. The reports did not do him justice. He is extraordinary. For the next hour, Lisa's quarters were filled with official visitors. The captain of the Meridian Dawn came to thank her personally, bringing a formal commendation from the Galactic Rescue and Safety Commission. The ship's passengers had taken up a collection and presented Lisa with a reward that made her gasp. It was enough money to pay her rent for 2 years. We owe our lives to you and your dragon, the captain said, a tall human man with tears in his eyes. My grandchildren were on that ship. I cannot thank you enough. Thexalor arrived mid-morning with an official document. The station administration has fast-tracked your companion creature application, he said. Nomi is now registered as an official engineering assistant with full clearance to accompany you anywhere on the station. Engineering assistant? Lisa asked, trying not to laugh. It was the best classification I could create on short notice, Thexalor said. His scales showed just a hint of blue, which Lisa now recognized as his version of humor. He has certainly proven himself capable of assisting with complex engineering tasks. By afternoon, the media frenzy had reached overwhelming levels. Reporters from dozens of species crowded outside Lisa's quarters. Station security had to set up barriers to keep them back. Every news network in the sector wanted an exclusive interview. The story had spread beyond simple news and had become a cultural phenomenon. Lisa watched on her tablet as species from across the galaxy reacted to Nomi's story. The rigid, rule-focused Kraviks were discussing the value of compassion and emotional connections. The Quilnari had declared Nomi an honorary hatchling of their entire species. The Brontari had started a movement to create more programs for cross-species cooperation. Even species that had been in conflict with each other for decades were finding common ground in their shared appreciation for the baby dragon. "It's not just about what he did," Captain Brooks explained, sitting with Lisa in her quarters while Nomi napped. "It's about what he represents." A human raised a dragon as her child. That dragon then used his natural abilities to save hundreds of beings from dozens of different species. It's a perfect story of cooperation and connection across all the boundaries we usually maintain. "I just wanted to take care of him," Lisa said quietly. "I saw a baby who needed help and I helped him. That's all. But that's the human thing, isn't it?" the captain said with a smile. "You see someone who needs help and you help them, regardless of what species they are or what's convenient for you. Most species in the galaxy don't think that way. The Kravix follow rules and protocols. The Quilnari focus on profit and efficiency. The Aryans prioritize logic and reason. But humans, we lead with compassion. We adopt orphaned dragons and bring them to work when we can't find a babysitter, and sometimes that human tendency to care creates something wonderful." Lisa looked down at Nomi, sleeping peacefully in his bed. He looked so small and innocent. It was hard to believe this tiny creature had become the most famous being on the station, maybe in the entire sector. Over the next few days, the situation evolved. Danny helped Lisa manage the flood of interview requests, accepting only a few from reputable news organizations and declining all the commercial offers. Lisa did one interview where she explained how she found Nomi, how she trained him, and how she never imagined he would do something so heroic. The interviewer, a professional Aryan journalist, asked the question everyone wanted answered. How did you know he could do it? How did you know to trust him with so many lives at stake? Lisa had thought about this question a lot. I didn't know for certain, she admitted. But I knew Nomi. I knew how hard he tries to please me and help me. I knew how much he practices to get things right. And I knew we didn't have any other options. Sometimes you have to trust that the beings you love will rise to meet the challenges in front of them. That quote was repeated across every news network. It became a saying that beings of all species started using. Trust that the beings you love will rise to meet the challenge. The station's commerce district exploded with Nomi merchandise despite Lisa's refusal to officially license anything. There were plush toys that breathed pretend fire when you squeezed them, holographic keychains showing Nomi making his heart-shaped flame, t-shirts with his face, children's books telling simplified versions of his story. A bakery started making dragon-shaped cookies. A restaurant created a dessert called Nomi's Flame that came to the table actually on fire. Lisa found it all overwhelming and strange, but also oddly touching. She watched alien children playing with Nomi toys, making their plush dragons save imaginary people. She saw beings from hostile species sitting together in cafes, united by their shared appreciation for the baby dragon's story. He's changed things, Danny observed one evening as they walked through the commerce district. Nomi rode on Lisa's shoulder, watching everything with bright curiosity. Everywhere they went, beings stopped to wave at him or offer small gifts. The station feels different now. More connected somehow, it was true. The invisible walls between species had become more permeable. Beings who would have walked past each other without acknowledgement now stopped to chat. The Kravix, who had always been stiff and formal, were smiling more. The Quilnari traders were known for their aggressive bargaining, but now Lisa saw them being kind to customers, especially young ones. Thexeler had changed the most noticeably. The stern supervisor now kept a drawer full of treats for Nomi, and had been observed speaking gently to the dragon during breaks. He smiled more. His scales showed color more freely. He even started a program to teach other Kravix about emotional expression and connection. "You taught me something important," he told Lisa one day in the engineering bay. "I always believed that strict adherence to rules and protocols was the highest virtue. But watching you with Nomi, seeing how 3 weeks had passed since the rescue, and life on Nexus Point had settled into a new kind of normal." Lisa stood at her workstation in the engineering bay, tightening a bolt on a freighter's stabilizer while Nomi supervised from his special perch nearby. The dragon had grown slightly in the past weeks, though he was still small enough to fit comfortably in Lisa's bag when he wanted to nap. His scales had become even more brilliant, shimmering blue in the bay's lights. The engineering bay itself had transformed into something Lisa never expected. It was no longer just a place where repairs happened. It had become a gathering spot, a place where beings from all over the station found excuses to visit. There was always someone stopping by to see Nomi, to share a piece of fruit with him, or simply to sit quietly and watch him play. Right now, a group of Kilnari traders sat on the floor near Lisa's workstation, clicking softly to each other while Nomi showed them his newest trick. He could now blow 3 heart-shaped flames in a row before needing to rest. The Kilnari applauded with their clicking language, clearly delighted. "Your hatchling grows stronger each day," Kritchak said to Lisa. The trader had become a regular visitor, stopping by at least once a day to check on Nomi. "Soon he will be able to fly." "The vet says maybe another month before his wings are strong enough," Lisa replied, feeling both excited and nervous about that milestone. A flying dragon would be a whole new challenge. Danny emerged from underneath a cargo hauler, grease smudged across his face. "The modifications are done. This bird should fly 20% more efficiently now." He spotted the Kilnari and grinned. "Hey, Kritchak, did you bring more of those purple fruits? Nomi loved those." "Of course," the trader said, pulling 3 of the spiky fruits from his bag. "Only the best for our small guardian." It was strange, Lisa reflected, how naturally everyone had adapted to calling Nomi our dragon rather than her dragon. He had become a collective treasure, something the whole station felt ownership over, and surprisingly, Lisa didn't mind. It felt right that Nomi brought joy to so many. The bay doors opened and Thexler entered, followed by a group of young Kravik students. This had become another regular occurrence. The supervisor had started bringing students and junior engineers to the bay to learn, but Lisa suspected the real lesson wasn't about mechanical repairs. It was about community and connection. "Good morning, Martinez," Thexler said. His scales were a warm green today, a color Lisa now recognized as contentment. "I brought the advanced engineering class. They are studying precision tool work." "Of course," Lisa said, suppressing a smile. Nomi was just about to practice his precision flames. "Maybe they'd like to watch?" The Kravik students' scales rippled with excitement, shifting through various colors. They gathered around,